the best version of yourself, doing something to the best ability, and not trying not to be average at it has became more and more important. So I think that was the driving force around all these things. So all of a sudden we find that we're in a position of doing the best we've ever done, but then it's all stopped. So the way I've managed this is, firstly, I had to pivot the business to do online events. So we did lots of webinars, something called E2E Live. So we pivoted that way. Secondly, we cut the cost quite a bit, because I knew it was about survival.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Inspire Pod with myself, Karan Kang. We bring you the best interviews with leading business people and entrepreneurs within their field. Today's guest previously spent 16 years within finance, specializing across banking, having worked with leading institutions such as Lloyds, TSB and Deutsche Bank. She's the founder and chief executive of E2E, a platform which connects founders and allows entrepreneurs to find advice, support, and finance, along with championing innovation. She's the non-executive director of UK Export Finance and a member of the Mayor of London's Business Advisory Board and Centre for Entrepreneurs. Today's guest is none other than Shalini Khemka. Hi Shalini, how are you?
Hi Karam, I'm good, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries, absolute pleasure to have you on board. I know one of our previous guests, Paresh Davdra, founder of Rational Effects, spoke incredibly highly of you. He mentioned it would be great to touch base, so it's so good to have you on board.
Thank you very much. Well, the feeling is mutual. I'm a huge fan of his and the work that he's done with Rational Effects and what he's doing now as well. Yeah.
Perfect. And appreciate I gave the audience a bit of a background there, about the work which you're currently doing and you previously done. Could you just give them a bit of a background to yourself and the journey prior to starting E2E?
Certainly, yes. Thank you very much, Karam. So my career has expanded and extended between entrepreneurship, private equity, and trade finance. So originally I started my career quite a long time ago now at Coopers & Lybrand as a trainee chartered accountant. And from there I moved to onto the sort of accelerated graduate scheme of NatWest Bank in international trade. The reason I made that shift is I'd done accountancy and I wanted to do something which involved working with businesses around the world, and the closest I could get to that was international trade finance. So from international trade finance, I moved to Bankers Trust, which became Deutsche Bank. It's when I was at Deutsche Bank, something clicked in my mind, which I realized watching people like Brent Hoberman and other companies at the time when it was the dot-com sort of boom or bubble, as you'd say, around the 2000 mark. And I thought, why is trade finance not done online? And I'd been thinking about it for a long time. So I was fortunate to start a business with 3 other guys, all of us who left Deutsche Bank. And it was the first business in the world to trade letters of credit, which is a trade finance instrument, letters of credit online. And we grew the business to around 35 people by 2004. But then we went through some difficulties, which is what the banks didn't like the auctions we were creating. So we were ahead of our time. So we decided to sell the business. And the business was merged into a company called Blue Crest, which is a hedge fund. From there, I was invited to run trade finance for Lloyds Banking Group. So it was the first time someone had invited me, because people ask me, why do you go from being an entrepreneur back into the corporate world? And the thing is, in the corporate world before, I'd always put myself forward. So this is the first time someone asked me to head up a division. So I ran plain vanilla trade finance for Lloyds for 5 years. I started to want to go back into entrepreneurship. And from there, I moved to a company called LDC, Lloyds TSB Development Capital. And it's the private equity arm of Lloyds Banking Group, and it's a very active mid-market private equity firm. When I was there, I saw business done in a different way to the way I had done business in my first company. So that's where the idea and the penny dropped in my mind to set up E2E, because when I look at the things that I should have done differently, I didn't have much of a network of entrepreneurs. I didn't go for external advice through mentors and non-exec directors. We didn't raise external funding. We all invested ourselves in our first company. So when I met some serial entrepreneurs, I met, for example, Judy Narke, who founded Saint-Tropez. I met Gareth Williams of Skyscanner. I met a gentleman called Jay Bregman from Halo, and he was the first investor in Halo. I realized that I should have done things differently. Hence, I started E2E. E2E is for entrepreneurs and it's by entrepreneurs, but to help them really build the ecosystem of support that they need in order to grow their businesses and, importantly, make the right decisions. So I was fortunate because when I pitched my idea to LDC, LDC said actually they would back the idea. They let me start this part-time as I was an investment director there. And again, a little bit of luck played in here that I was working on the Virgin Racing transaction with LDC. The CEO at the time, Daryl Eales, he invited me to go to Monaco. And we spent quite a lot of time with Richard Branson's team on his catamaran. And this is when I was able to ask Richard Branson to effectively spearhead the organization as our president. And then it all started rolling. So that's my background.
Wow, that's really exciting. I love the background and journey of, specializing in a business which you'd actually seen a need for first half whilst you were in the corporate environment. And what skills and experience whilst you were in that corporate environment do you feel really helped you whilst founding your own business and later on through the years in E2E?
I think it's more about, rather than my skills or my experience, I think it's about attitude. I think what I've always, I've learned about myself now, which I didn't know earlier. I've always been tenacious, and I've always wanted to be somebody who hopefully isn't mediocre. For me, being the best version of yourself, doing something to the best ability, and not trying not to be average at it has became more and more important. So I think that was the driving force around all these things. And in terms of skills, I guess I've been fortunate. Good background education, good financial education, developed quite a lot of interpersonal skills, probably because of my family upbringing on the interpersonal side. So I would say it's more about my approach to life that has helped steer the path, and a lot about who has influenced me. So those sorts of things.
That's really interesting because pretty much every entrepreneur we've had on this show has really credited more so the attitude, personality, and their mindset over their actual skills. And they say exactly like you did, want to be, don't want to be average.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just interesting that for anyone listening and myself as well, how do you measure that, not being average, compared to other people in the same, whether it's industry or same business?
Again, I don't think we would, I would say I would compare myself. It's a benchmark against myself. Because I think we're always doomed for negativity if we benchmark ourselves against others. But it's knowing that I am doing the best I can and I'm not going with the status quo. Let me give you an example. So when I was at Lloyds Banking Group, I put myself forward to run the Emerging Leaders Network, and I was sent to Malawi for a few weeks. There was a gentleman called Tariq Tate who was essentially the head of wholesale banking. I pitched to him and the head of risk that I should go to Malawi and set up, be part of the bank, which was called Opportunity International Microfinance. But I wasn't comparing myself with anyone. It's just coming up with new ideas and trying to do new things, which then when I did that, I learned a new skill set, how it's like to work in Malawi and work in Africa and what are the difficulties there and how to deal with people. So yeah, that kind of approach of sort of saying to myself, do something more.
Yeah.
And even when I look at my current business, E2E, there is nobody telling me I have to do it. And I keep waking up every day and I keep thinking, why? Why? What is it? What's the driver? Why am I doing this? But there's something in me that is saying, actually, if I do a really good job with this and my team will do well, they will, feel happy and successful. And very importantly, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs that we support. We will be making a massive difference. So even though this is a COVID time and it was an easy time for us to say, actually, this is a good time to walk away from it all because it's a tough business. It's not a product, it's a service, it's an events-led business. This would have been a good time to say, actually, it's been a long time. Is it the right thing to do? Shall I go and rest for a bit and, take some time out for myself? But I don't know what it is, Karam. There is something there that doesn't allow me to stop. Can't define it.
Do you think that's something you're either born with or your environment or, family influence, or is it just something you can't put your finger on at all?
I can't put my finger on it if I'm honest, but I don't think we're born this way. I think it's not about DNA. I think it's about influencing factors. There may be some little bit of it that's DNA, but I think it develops through your experiences in life. And what you face and what you go through. And some of it may be to do with nature, but I wasn't like this when I was little. When I was a child, I don't think I was so keen on making a difference.
Right. And when you mentioned, obviously we're going through COVID at the time and a lot of businesses were struggling with, during that initial setup from E2E, what challenges, have you come up against within your own business, and how have you overseen them, and what's got you through on the other side?
Sure, so lots of challenges. So for example, with E2E, we'd organise roughly 45 to 50 physical events a year in 11 different cities. And they range from breakfast at the House of Lords for 50 people with Lord Bill Morrow kindly chairing all of them, to large-scale receptions for 150 people with IWG, etc. So that brought us a lot of our income. And we also made income on helping companies with their fundraising, with finding non-exec directors. We made income on helping to sell companies, buy companies, and transactions for our members. But we didn't take a membership fee from our members. So all the money that we make is either from corporates or from success fees on transactions. So all of a sudden, a lot of our event income, March, just went on hold. And obviously couldn't host physical events. Then if we look at the angel funding side of things, that became more tough. So making success fees on finding our entrepreneurs, venture capital money, angel investment money, much more difficult. Entrepreneurs being able to afford NEDs became more difficult. So that income has also reduced. So all of a sudden we find that we're in a position of doing the best we've ever done, but then it's all stopped. So the way I've managed this is, firstly, I had to pivot the business to do online events. So we did lots of webinars, something called E2E Live. So we pivoted that way. Secondly, we cut the cost quite a bit because I knew it was about survival. And I think I'm in a fortunate position that we're surrounded with the who's who of entrepreneurship. Lord Bird did a webinar with us. Lara Morgan did a webinar with us. All the advice, Pontus Noreen, who did Cloudreach, who sold it to Blackstone, every single person said, you've got to survive. And right now, it's about keeping your powder dry. So that's a big change that we made. With the team, we made some changes in terms of some people left, some people went part-time. Everything that was physical all of a sudden became digital. I'm one of these people that like to see people working in front of me. I've never been used to the home working. So all my team were always in the office, and I love that atmosphere of everyone being in the office. So I had to change my mindset and say, actually, they're at home. And that was quite hard. So, but everyone's now well set up to be working at home, and we're actually more productive than we were historically in terms of project plans and getting things done. So there's been a lot of things that we've had to think through. And the main things summarize into keep your costs low, pivot the business model as quickly as possible, dependent on technology, make sure your staff are comfortable, they're set up well, and importantly, try and stay positive. So those are the sort of big changes that have had to be made. And I've also spoken to all of our corporate partners. Nothing has been cancelled, touch wood. Everything has been deferred. So as and when we can run our events again, they will pick up in September, October time. They may be smaller, they may be more socially distanced, but we didn't lose our partners. And, I'm really thankful to our partners not to say, look, fine, we'll delay, but they haven't cancelled contracts. So that's been good as well. So I think it's also given me a time to catch up with some of our members who are not necessarily always seeing by doing these sorts of things. So a lot of change. The other thing that's taken up my time is I've been doing quite a lot of work with the government. So a gentleman called Maurice Ostro, who's the Prime Minister's Special Advisor for Entrepreneurship, he set up something called the Business Action Council. Now, the Business Action Council consists, I think, of 23 different membership organisations from the CBI, Federation of Small Businesses, the IOD, Entrepreneurs Organisation, and E2E. On that, there's 8 subcommittees, and I'm chairing one called the Employee Retention Subcommittee. So my subcommittee, we submitted our first policy paper in April, and that was to ask the government to look at flexi furlough. So flexi furlough has been introduced in July. Then with myself, Lord Stanley Fink, Lord Bill Moria, Lord Rami Ranger, I'm just trying to think, and Daryl Eales, and a lady called Natasha from Sterling Media. We wrote to the Chancellor to ask him to introduce loans which are 100% guaranteed by government. So a lot of work went into that. So the bounce back loan was introduced about a month ago now. Yeah. So I've got very, very heavily involved because I guess we have so many members, they talk to us about their challenges, to recommend policy tweaks and changes to government. And the Business Action Council is one route to that. Plus we've been writing to the Chancellor's office ourselves as E2E with Lord Lee, Lord Stanley Fink and so on. Yeah.
That's incredibly exciting and great to see how busy we've all still been. And it goes back to what you mentioned, that you just can't take time off. And with the changes that you spoke about pivoting during COVID and moving things online and teams being remote, I'm exactly like you. I love face-to-face meetings. I love being around people. I think you get that energy and creativity, but then I also see the benefits of not having to commute, and people can be productive. Do you have an idea of what you think the future will look like if businesses will stay remote, or if we can go back to the old norm?
I think it's going to take a bit of time, Karan, but I'm hoping that what will happen is we will have a hybrid model come September, October time, that people will be working part-time from home, part-time from the office. I know for a lot of the large corporates that I've been talking to, they have asked their staff to work from home a lot more, and some of their staff will come in. So I do see that change sticking for a while, but I'm not sure whether it's permanent. It may be that it's a permanent change, but we're human beings, we like to be around people. So maybe it will take a year, maybe it will take 2 years, and we might be back into an environment where people are more together in an office environment. But I don't see that changing quickly, and it may never change at all. We may end up with a hybrid model.
Yeah, that probably makes more sense. And then companies are obviously going to save costs on rental, and like we said, commute times. Hopefully it's healthier for everybody as well. And
for the environment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, wow. We've seen it like in India and China, what it's done for carbon emissions alone. It's been pretty incredible that we did take these steps before.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, absolutely. And even for the UK, you know, we've got a cleaner London. I'm in London. We have a greener, cleaner London. So the mayor's agenda, with one of his big things, is a greener London, and I think it has contributed to a greener London, uh, irrespective of the downside of it all. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think, any of my clients watching this will love that, the net zero targets by 2030 and 2050. It's hopefully things like this, bad things can give you opportunity, and hopefully cleaner world is one of them. And beginning of the show, when you're given a background, you mentioned one thing, which was, when you set up E2E, knowing more during the corporate world helped you with that. So could you elaborate on that, on, the things which now that could help you if you were to set up a new organization, or that you could tell somebody who's founding their own company that could help them?
Sure. I think the first thing is, it's very important to do the research, and to really work out your business model, because once you get started and you've not thought it through enough, it's very hard to stop and go back. So let me give you an example in my own situation. So with E2E, I started it as a way of doing good, to help entrepreneurs, not necessarily thinking this is going to be my next big business. That wasn't the plan. The plan was, I saw things I could have done differently, and I wanted to help other people convert that knowledge into wisdom as quickly as possible. But if I had spent more time on the business model, I probably would have invested much more in technology 9 years ago, and created a digital business in 2011 rather than 2020. And my turnover might have been significantly more. It could have been different. Having said that, hindsight's 2020 vision. So first piece of advice there is not to start a business until you've done the research and you've really worked out what makes your business a little bit unique, what makes it different. It may be you're doing the same thing, but it would be the execution of it. People have connected people all over the world forever, but it's how you do it. So that's one thing. Secondly, I think I was fortunate, and I would always recommend this to other people, is having one or two of the right non-execs or advisors. They don't actually have to sit on your board. They can be presidents or fellows or whatever you might like to call them. But having a couple of people who've been there, done it before, advising you and being a door opener is quite critical to the success of a business, especially if you're young and starting up. I think today really investing in your operational processes. So looking at who you need, how they work, what systems you'd use, what CRM, data management, data. It's absolutely crucial. And again, I don't think we were very good at it, and I was trying to get much better at it right now. So I used to store all the spreadsheets of, we would do maybe 20 events in 2011. We're doing 50 now, but I would store everything on spreadsheets. I didn't have a CRM system. Whereas if I'd had a CRM system, I would have been much more organized and have saved a lot of time. This kind of thing, looking at your payroll processes, things to make you much more operationally efficient, not to underplay them, those are critical. And then I think the thing which COVID has also taught me is to keep money in the bank. Ideally, make sure you have 6 months payroll. If you can, 12 months payroll banked, not living month by month, because then you're going to go through a lot of stress in times of difficulty. So thinking about the cash management of the business, it's critical. Difficult when you're starting a business. Where does that cash come from? So other thing is around all of this is to try maybe a pilot version of the business before you go in and put everything in. Don't give up your day job and start a business without perhaps trialing it on the side to see, can you actually do something like this? And then if you can, then you can walk away from your day job. But it's always a good thing to just try something in a measured way. before going all out and doing something, unless you're not working.
That's great advice. Funnily enough, something you just mentioned there, I was listening to about this morning. So I was just watching an old interview of Bill Gates, and he was saying how he always tried to make sure that he had at least 12 months payroll in the banks. He wouldn't, sit comfortably unless he could pay everybody for at least 12 months. And that's what kept him on edge and kept him busy sometimes. And also what you mentioned about advisors and the team around you and support network, that was with an interview you actually did a while ago where you spoke about the importance of mentorship and how that's something that E2E offers as well. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, I think it's very, very important to be surrounded by the right people, because we are who we're surrounded by in many ways. Those are the influencing factors. And someone that you can be very open with is quite important, because you want to be able to chat through everything going on in your mind. And it's the talk process often that defines how you're going to do things. We can write away as much as we want, but it's actually when we talk it out loud like this, it helps. So having a mentor, I think, makes, and you don't have to define it as mentor, but friends who really understand business. And that's why I'm saying mentor is quite cute. People who've been through it before, not necessarily in your own sector, but have run a business, sold a business, gone through difficulties, maybe not been successful, maybe failed, it doesn't matter, but have done those sorts of things. And who you have that trust and chemistry with is quite important. So we place non-exec directors and mentors onto the boards of businesses, and we've been doing that by matchmaking through emails and face-to-face meetings. Now, in the technology that we're launching, we're introducing E2E advice as a SaaS service, so people can book people by the hour. Some of it will be free, and some of it will be chargeable. So it depends on the entrepreneur who's giving the advice. We've been fortunate that there's a lot of people in the E2E network who's willing to help our members. But I think it's important to join some kind of network, whether it's us or somebody else. It doesn't really matter. But to be a part of a network where you can access the right people and really listen is quite important, I'd say.
That's great advice. And looking at E2E and where it is today, how's it developed from what you initially set out to achieve?
Okay, so initially when I set it up, I wasn't planning to do this full time. I was planning to do it as a fun thing on the side. So it's become a proper business. Number one, we've got staffing, we've raised investment, we've got some brilliant investors in E2E. They include people like Peter Roberts, who founded Pure Gym. They include Judy Narke, Daryl Eales, who headed up LDC. They include like 12 of the who's who of UK entrepreneurship. So if you'd asked me a long time ago that would we raise external investment and would we have a company that is growing in valuation this way, I wouldn't have thought of it that way. I thought of it more as a not-for-profit, just for doing good, not as a commercial enterprise. So we have E2E Exchange as our not-for-profit, and we have E2E Enterprise as our commercial business, which now has a very decent valuation because we just closed the fundraising round. So thank you. Yeah. So that, I think, is the key thing. And I mean, I think if I'd stayed in a corporate career, I wouldn't be fortunate enough to have got to meet so many entrepreneurs who've also motivated me. And they've become part of my social network as well as my business network. So some of my closest friends now are people who I've met through E2E. So my currency of our success is actually adding value to their lives in many ways. Yeah,
that's great. And obviously, having during the introduction, we spoke about so many things you're doing outside of E2E, which you just touched upon there.
Yeah.
How do you manage that, working on your own core business and then do work for, like the government and, the Mayor of London? How do you manage it and where do these opportunities come from?
So there is a cost to all of this. And the cost is there's not a lot of personal life. So I don't want to give people the wrong impression. The things I've taken on I've taken on with a view to supporting entrepreneurs, and I love doing that. And also, if me and E2E can have an influence in London policy or government policy to help the wider community, that motivates me. So I do it by working solidly, early starts, very late finishes. I also try and keep my meetings short. So 20-minute meetings, maximum 30-minute meetings. Usually, on the rare exception, there'll be an hour, 1 hour meeting that goes in my diary. So that's partly how I manage it. And I've got a good team. They're a strong team. They're very capable. So that helps as well.
Great. And you
Does that answer your question,
yeah,
Karen?
no, it does, and it's a great point that you mentioned, because you touched upon the sacrifice with time and lifestyle, and those sacrifices, it's not something that everybody sees. Entrepreneurship, maybe through social media, it's quite glorified now. People think it's just going to buy them a new Lamborghini or a mansion overnight. Could you talk about the real sacrifices, which have gone behind, setting up your business in that other entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, sure. One of them has been lack of time to spend with my friends, like, my university friends and my girlfriends. Not many holidays at all, but I don't even spend a lot of time, if I'm honest, with my family, other than my immediate brother who lives with me. Didn't get married, not had children. So it was never planned like this. And I don't live with regrets. I always look to the future. I'm a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. But if I am honest, I prioritize my work rather than other things, and that may not be in the long run the best thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is important. Like, I know when I sell my own business, you're up at 5 and asleep at 5 a.m. the next day. It's just 24/7. But then if you love it and the goals there, then that's
the other aspect is, I think when I was in corporate environment, I could easily buy a Gucci handbag or go and buy a Chanel suit or something.
Yeah.
None of that. So the financial side of life as a founder, it's very different unless you do well and exit. So there has been that sacrifice, which you feel it, but you still keep motivated to say, actually, you can get there. Yeah.
Definitely. And you've obviously created an incredible network, and the way you built up your own business. Can you give the audience some tips and advice on connecting with people, building your network, building teams, etc.?
Yes, certainly. So I think, again, it comes down to a little bit around organization. I think the easier thing to do is going to meet people, and maybe not so much now, but it's easy to go to an event. The difficult part thereafter is staying connected. So I always encourage our members, it's the follow-up rather than what happens on the particular, whether it's a Zoom call or whether it's a face-to-face meeting, it's the follow-up. And then making sure you use your either your CRM system to track, make notes, because nobody's memory is going to be that brilliant that you can remember every conversation. So being able to reference back to say, hey, I remember you said to me you're going to get married, we'll go in our CRM. Yeah. So that if I haven't spoken to you for 6 months, I can ask you, how was your wedding, or when is it going, or that kind of thing. So I tend to try and keep notes of conversations, which I think helps. And a little bit of research before going to meet somebody, whether virtually or physically, I think always helps. And something someone taught me when I was at an LDC is try and make sure you're always remembered. Do something that leaves an impression, say something that leaves an impression, or make a contribution that leaves an impression in whatever way. So I think that helps to build your network.
Right. And that obviously networking is one great skill which you've you use quite well. What would you say your best skill is that's helped you during your corporate and current career, and how have you developed that?
That's a really good question. I think it would be that I enjoy building relationships with people, getting to understand what drives people, and trying to find a solution to support them. So I'm always connecting people. Um, so I think that's my big forte, is to say, actually, you should meet so and so because this might happen. And I've done a lot of that actually since I was little. Um, so I think that's my natural skill of joining the dots, and maybe to some extent uh, wanting to do something that leaves a legacy. It's not a skill, but a motivation as well.
And again, maybe it's not something you can measure, but what does that mean to you? Leaving a legacy. Is it something that how it can be measured, or you've got a picture of it, or is it feeling inside you that you can feel content now?
I think it's feeling inside you that you can feel content now, but it's also knowing that you're doing things where you can see people gaining from a result of that. So, for example, if you're fundraising and we manage to raise you £5 million, whether that company is successful or not doesn't matter, but for the 5 years or however long that money would last you, it's helped you grow your business and helped you retain your team. How I look at that.
Absolutely. And of course, within E2E, there's so many great entrepreneurs who you've listed that you work with, and also externally of this, Lug Bilibori and Rami Ranger, who we had on here as well.
Oh, did you? He's great. Yeah.
Yes, such great entrepreneurs.
Brilliant. Yeah.
What's the common denominators that you see in all of these people who've created whether it's success, happiness, wealth, or business?
Sure. One, I think, is they're very hardworking. Rami came to the UK with nothing, and his socks off to build Sunmark Group. Other thing is hunger. They're hungry to do something, which means they contribute to the UK, contribute globally, and I've seen a lot of them charisma. It might be extroverted charisma or introverted charisma, but there's a charisma there, which I really enjoy watching. So I think those are the sort of three core things: hard work, charisma, and this hunger to do well. And they tend to be quite authentic.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Hunger is something we see with everybody again who even myself with the companies we recruit for. When you're building a team for an MD who's got that hunger and drive and genuine passion, it's going to be a team that's going to be sustainable and hit their targets. And with that it's quite hard to see them moving forward. And
cope with stress. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I've also found that they can cope with stress. Most of these entrepreneurs have gone through lots of stress,
right.
But they don't let it show very much until you sit down and you have a private conversation, and then you realize the level of difficulties, whether it's financial stuff or whether it's operational or legal, but they can cope with it.
How do you cope with stress? Have you got any tips?
I don't know. I keep telling myself, don't get stressed. Just everything will be okay. And I've got good family who tell me the same. One of the things that you were going to ask me about role models, and I think my mum, my dad, they're very good role models because they've gone through so much and they've managed to stay positive as a result of it. We're surrounded by great entrepreneurs who are some of my role models. So I think it's a combination of my mental attitude and saying to myself, everything will be all right, finding alternative ways of doing things, and having a nice support network. There's no real smart answer to this one, I'm afraid, from my perspective.
Yeah. And that belief you have that that's something, that things will work out, that things will go right. Again, is that something that you've developed over time, or you've worked on, or it just came naturally to you?
No, I think I've developed it over time. Uh, I've I've learned it by talking to myself in some little talk in my head, telling me this over time. I don't think it was natural. I don't know what the other entrepreneurs say, but that's for me.
Yeah, it's very similar. They say that it's just a concrete belief within themselves, whether it comes from their religion or it comes from them having a goal that they believe that they can hit, or just seeing something that nobody else can see, and having a belief that it's something that they can create. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah. I think if we stop believing what's this, don't do it. You've got to have the conviction that what you're doing can result in what you want it to result in. Otherwise, where's the fun in the journey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, still within the journey on E2E. Where do you see the business being? This time in 10 years' time.
It's a really good question. What I would love is for E2E to be recognized a bit like when you think about telephone, you think mobile phone, you think Apple. When you're an entrepreneur and you have an issue, you want to connect to someone, you need some support in any way or form, I'm hoping that the word E2E is on people's fingertip, tongue, because I'm hoping that we add so much value that through word of mouth, people will say, gosh, you need to go to E2E, and you'll be able to get the support infrastructure that you need there. That's where I'd like it to be as a household name for founders globally.
Brilliant. That's great. And is there anything else that you want to mention about E2E, or anything that our audience is listening that as well as the support network, if they're setting up their own business or on their journey, that your team can help them with?
The only other thing I'd say, Karim, is discipline is really, really important. So putting a project, it doesn't have to be written, but knowing where you need to get to by certain timeframes and trying to work to those timeframes, because time passes so fast. And as you get older, unfortunately, it passes quicker. So I think that whole mental approach and discipline around our time management is quite critical in terms of our personalities.
Fantastic.
Be ambitious. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Yeah. As we, you probably see with a lot of these podcasts, the last round is just a final five, and we tend to try and tailor it around our guests to understand them better. So we'll just go into that. It's typically one word through to a sentence.
Okay.
Cool. But first question is, what is the one thing which excites you most about E2E?
Making a difference.
Yeah. Would you advise people to work for money or follow their passion?
Always follow the passion. Be commercial though.
Yeah. Who has been the one most influential person within your career?
Yeah, I'd say both my parents, because my father's a doctor, he's a surgeon. My mum was in education. They've been very influential, but also there's 12 members of my advisory board. They're all my mentors, and they make me think about things, which is amazing. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you obviously work with a lot of exciting, innovative startups. What is the one, whether it's market or innovation about the future that excites you the most?
It's health tech.
Health tech.
Health tech. I love everything to do with health research, new advancements in health, whether it's treatment of cancer, whether it's the treatment of COVID. It's technology firms who can change the way we live in terms of our health.
Right. And what is the one bit of advice you would tell yourself? What is the one bit of advice you would tell your 20-year-old self?
To have enjoyed myself more when I was in my 20s, because I don't get time now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in your 20s, obviously be ambitious, but go enjoy. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Look, absolutely brilliant having you on again. Really loved your background, advice, and the
Thanks.
fantastic work you're doing within E2E. For anybody who wants to follow, whether it's your work or any social pages, where
Yeah.
can they go to?
So our website is the number two E, and then exchange, XCHANGE.com. And the LinkedIn is E2E Exchange. The social media is E2E Exchange, or E2E Exchange. Pretty much,
Fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
That's great. And anybody watching this, remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at inspire.pod, or other social forms as LinkedIn, InspirePod. And we look forward to having you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you very much, Karam. Really nice to be on. Thank you.